So today's prophecy is looking at humanoids, which means having a human shape, but not human. Humanoids and serpent people, July 6, 2021. And the overall banner for this was just Alien. I put it in the Alien series. I'm not yet finished with the Alien series. I still have quite a few dreams to share. So I was spending time reading my Bible that night, and the voice of the Lord kept speaking to me and saying they have to be exposed. They have to be exposed. As soon as I opened my eyes in that sleepy state, the Lord said to me, hollowed out, plasticine, robotoid people, meaning basically robot people. Then he said, empty shells, no wires, full of hardware, metal chips, not people. Serpents among men, false humans, serpents mixed with human flesh, not people. And then right after that, I saw human-like shapes, like dolls, sitting in a row in a factory or a warehouse. They were either sitting on a bench or they were just in a long row seated, and they had a lot of wires and tubes coming from their heads. And what stuck out is a large tube coming out of the mouth and a large tube coming out of the head, both white. And all these wires and tubes coming out of all these male and female dolls. They were predominantly male-shaped, human-shaped dolls sitting in a row. But I have to tell you, these dolls were not synthetic, doll-like. They had the same type of consistency that we have for flesh, except that they were not alive. Their eyes were staring straight forward blankly, and they were already dressed in business suits. However, they were blank, just the way a brand new computer is blank. It doesn't have anything on it except the basic software. It doesn't have passwords. It doesn't have your information. Nothing on it personalizes that laptop. That's how empty they were. They were staring straight ahead, and they were completely bald. So they had not yet grown heads, grown hair. And so they just had these white tube on the head and a big tube in the mouth, and then these other wires going up from each doll. Now, these wires, following with my eyes, went up to the ceiling of the building, and there was a large disc-like object attached to the ceiling, and it was glowing. So it was silvery, but at the same time it was also full of light, sort of the bright white fluorescent light that you use in the kitchen rather than in the lounge space. And all the wires went into that large disc that was attached to the ceiling, and that disc was keeping them alive. These men and women were already dressed, and they looked just like people, but they were not. And what the Lord put into my heart is, Celestial, here's how it goes. They sit here empty and they wait to be needed. So when one of them is needed, then this empty shell will be taken off the assembly line, and the tube from the mouth and the tube from the head will be removed. It will then be woken up, and a consciousness, meaning a personality, making it Betty or Bob, will be loaded onto that doll. And then they will give it time to grow hair. They will also give it time to process the software that has been put into them, so that they can have at least a working knowledge of what it means to be human. There's a distinct difference between being human and doing all the things that we do instinctively, laughing at a joke, getting angry if it requires it, or needing sleep and food. We don't think, at what time shall I feed? At what time should I sleep? We don't think about the mechanisms that make us human. We just are. But these creatures that I saw would need time to go through the software that has been uploaded on them, so that they can get used to the concept of a human, and then also get used to being part of the concept of being human. And they have to get time to walk around, get used to walking, get used to talking, until they're finally ready. And then they let them go out the door and live with real people. Except that they look so real that once they're in the population, no one will ever know that there's nothing human inside that shell, that it only has hollow space, microchips, and uploaded brainware. And the Lord said to me again, hollowed out plasticine robotoid people, empty shells, no wires, full of hardware, metal chips, not people. And I tried to say, wait, because I'd just woken up. So I was trying to get my bearings. But before I could even ask anything, the vision shifted and I found myself in a New York City train station. I was surrounded by people who were not human and they were glitching like crazy. So in this vision I stood on the train platform and the train showed up and I got on. I sat down, I made myself comfortable, we pulled off. After a couple of stops, I noticed that people were very uncomfortable. Some people in that train car were extremely uncomfortable. And I realized that they were uncomfortable because of me. What the Lord showed me is that a very high-pitched signal that was shaped like the Wi-Fi signal. Now, you know the Wi-Fi signal is like this, and then it has little rings in it. A very high-pitched signal shaped like the Wi-Fi signal was coming out of me. It was emitting a high-pitched sound that was not immediately audible. And that sound was the name of Jesus. So the sound coming out of me was Jesus. And as the Lord showed me later, that I will explain, that sound that was coming out of me, the presence of God covered about 75% of the box train car that I was in. And wherever human beings were sitting, they did not care. They were on their Kindles. They were on their Beats by Dre. They didn't care. They were on headphones. They were reading. They were just relaxed. And they didn't feel my presence in any way. But these non-human people were, excuse me, please, extremely sensitive to my presence. And if I can explain it, this is how it went. I got in and I sat down and this signal was coming out of me and I didn't know at first. And then I noticed that people were uncomfortable and they were glitching and their skin was changing. So their skin began to show splotches of dark green scales. Their skin began to show splotches of black scales like a serpent. Their skin began to show the silvery, rainbow-colored skin or covering that a fish has. And I was watching these people flush. This was a flush that was coming up into the body, starting in the neck. So whatever part of the neck is visible, this flush would rise up the neck. Sometimes it would show up on a cheek or on a patch, the whole forehead. And then just as suddenly it would go away. So some people were doing this like that creature Mystique in the X-Men where it comes and then, but with some, it just rose up suddenly in the neck or the face, and then it went away. I saw rainbow-colored fish scales, deep green lizard scales on the neck, and some people had this rubbery, tightly knit black snakeskin on the neck. And coming out of me was not only this Wi-Fi signal that was emitting the word Jesus, but a bright golden light. And when it hit humans, they did not notice or care. But whenever it touched these others, they began to seriously glitch. And how their glitch was, it wasn't only their skin giving them away. They became extremely discomfited. They were bouncing their leg. Some of them were visibly wringing their hands. Now, we know you wring your hands when you are extremely agitated or even when you're in deep grief. They were wringing their hands, and it was like they wanted to flee the car, but they could not. They were just sitting there. And so I saw fish skin, snake skin, lizard skin popping on and off cheeks, foreheads, and the necks of certain men and women in the car with me. It happened to people in business suits, but it also happened to people in ordinary clothing. And I didn't know if these people were aware of it, but I was staring in fascination. And I thought, wow, God, look at this. This is not real people. These are other things in a human shell looking like people. But whenever the presence of God comes around them, they're unable to maintain the spiritual wall that they create to make us see them as people. And their real self just shines through. And when I thought this, the Lord changed the view and it became an aerial view. So I was now looking down into the train car as if God would be looking down into the train car. And I saw myself like a little dot at the center of this outgoing Wi-Fi signal with this golden light coming out of me, which was emitting the name Jesus. And these people were extremely, extremely, extremely discomfited. And the Lord said to me, serpents among men, false humans, Serpents mixed with human flesh, not people.